Right now on Upfront.
Bombshell arrest.
Judge, anything to say about this?
The FBI arrested a Milwaukee County judge. This weekend, Judge Hannah Dugan facing federal charges. An unprecedented move, the feds accusing her of helping an undocumented immigrant evade arrest.
This overly dramatic arrest of a judge.
All this amidst our exclusive with Democratic Governor Tony Evers. In Green Bay as the NFL draft comes to an end. The potential tax cut agreement with Republicans.
What are the state of negotiations?
I'm not going to discuss what we're talking about.
Inside those negotiations, the battle line still drawn.
He is obsessed with people who don't pay taxes. He wants to punish success in this state.
President Trump and the governor's political future. We'll get to it all on a special split edition of Upfront from Green Bay.
Then, economic impact.
Yeah, I think people are loving it.
The projected $90 million draft impact statewide. Will it come true? Green Bay Mayor Eric Genrich is with us on the ground at Lambeau.
The Pope and politics.
I do kind of like the drama of it and the white smoke.
Remembering Pope Francis and what's next for the Catholic Church.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. What a weekend across Wisconsin. Jaron is in Green Bay as the NFL draft now comes to an end.
An incredible 72 hours, Matt, here in Titletown. The 2025 NFL draft is officially in the books. Hundreds of thousands of fans in Green Bay for the three-day event, the picks, the pageantry, and now the economic impact.
Jaron, we'll get to it all. First, the major developments here. Protests outside the federal courthouse in Milwaukee this weekend. The FBI arresting Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan Friday. Federal officials accusing her of helping an immigrant evade ICE agents who were at the courthouse to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz. He was facing domestic violence charges in Milwaukee County. The arrest coming just after our interview with Governor Tony Evers, one-on-one with the governor at the Oneida Nation Elementary School during the NFL draft. On Friday, the FBI arrested Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan inside the Milwaukee County Courthouse. The judge now charged with 2 felonies, accused of helping an undocumented immigrant evade arrest by federal immigration authorities.
Judge, anything to say about this?
Dugan leaving the courthouse Friday, not commenting on the charges. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi Friday on Fox News.
We looked into the facts in great depth. That's her picture up on the screen. Hannah Dugan, who is now in custody. You cannot obstruct a criminal case, and really shame on her. It was a domestic violence case of all cases, and she's protecting a criminal defendant over victims of crime.
Recently, Governor Evers issued a new directive to state employees if ICE agents were to show up at a state building. Congressman Tom Tiffany on the arrest saying, if you help illegal aliens evade arrest, you will be arrested. State employees think twice before following Governor Evers' illegal memo.
Your administration recently directed state employees to not answer questions or hand over any documents if federal immigration officials would show up at state buildings. I'm curious why that directive.
Well, we also asked, suggested to them that we have an attorney in just about every area of our work. And so I just think if they come in, if ICE comes in and wants to talk to somebody, I think an attorney should be there. And then just take it one step at a time. I don't think, are we going to stop ICE from doing whatever they're going to do? Absolutely not. But we want to make it fair for the people that are our employees. I think it's important that they have access to an attorney just for that interchange between ICE and one of our employees. This may never happen, but we just want to make sure that our employees feel comfortable that their employer is standing with them. Simple as that.
Republicans this past week accused you of instructing employees to break federal law.
Yeah, that's like crap, to be honest with you. That's what they would say if, no matter what. We're not encouraging them to break the law. In fact, a lot of the things that ICE is arresting people for, we're seeing now that, frankly, is no law breaking. And then what do you do? So I think having caution right up front, I think, is important, and giving our employees, we care for our employees. I think most employers in the state of Wisconsin that aren't government are concerned about the same thing. I mean, think about the farmers in the state of Wisconsin. They have all sorts of undocumented people, and if Donald Trump starts going after them, we will become a shadow of the state we are right now. We're not taking any rights away from ICE. Believe me, they run the show. We just want to make sure there's an attorney there, see the documents, what's going on. Can we do this someplace else rather than a place of work, and make it more reasonable.
You've sued the Trump administration a lot in these first 100 days.
Yeah.
Is this a successful strategy?
Well, it's a successful strategy. I think a lot of what he's doing that we're going to court on are inappropriate, and at the end of the day, if you think about it, Congress passed laws, Congress funds these laws that they've passed, and now we have the executive branch saying, oh, we don't really care about what you did in Congress. We're just going to say no. That's just not how our democracy works. And so we're going to continue to do that.
On Thursday, several federal judges blocked the Trump administration, at least for now, from withholding federal funds from public schools that participate in diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Attorney General Josh Kaul filing another lawsuit Friday. Ahead of that, State Superintendent Jill Underly said Wisconsin would not comply and not sign or submit any documents proving the elimination of DEI programs in Wisconsin schools.
State Superintendent Jill Underly essentially said, we're not going to sign any documents. We're not going to say that we're getting rid of DEI in public schools. Is Wisconsin now at risk of losing federal funding, do you think?
We'll see, but I think every state is facing that in education. I've been a teacher and a principal, superintendent. There's always one mantra that I believe in, and I still do believe in. If a kid needs an extra lift, they should get an extra lift. And if that extra lift means that we have to expend some money to get them to a better place, we should do that. Is that DEI? I would say probably from Donald Trump's point of view, that is. I think if we need to have a system that works for everybody, there are going to be times when we put more money in certain places and help kids get along.
Did she make the right decision? Underly in what she told the federal administration?
Yeah, she said that she believes that her local schools are complying. And the Trump administration, and I'm not saying what she did is right, wrong, or indifferent. All I believe in is that the schools, we're a pretty local control state. Yeah. And I was state superintendent. I probably would have done the same thing, saying, I believe they're doing it. If you don't like it, like my answer, go ask each one of them individually.
A couple quick questions of the state budget before we wrap. Are these tax cut negotiations, is this a real thing with Republicans?
Yeah, it's a real thing. But it also lets you know that it's just a first thing. I mean, we agreed that they want to do something around taxes, so we met with them, and now our staff are meeting together. So if we can find some resolution there, I think we should have a budget it should precede budget, but hopefully we can get some things done in this area, and it'll lead to others.
Is there a scenario you would sign a tax cut bill before the state budget?
Unless it's written the right way. I think you can't do a budget without having those two things together, the expenditures and the revenue. That said, if there's some way that they could convince me, I'm open to it, but I think it's unlikely.
Your Republicans said this past week your plan with the new tax bracket, raising taxes on the wealthiest Wisconsinites, they won't agree to. Do you have wiggle room on that in these negotiations?
Well, we can see. Yes, there's wiggle room, but we have to talk more than what we've done already. It's too early.
You have said you're not going to announce your reelection bid until after the budget, or you're not going to announce if you're going to run for reelection until after the budget. Have you personally, though, made up your mind?
I won't even answer that. It will happen after the budget. Simple as that. I can't pretend that I'm not trying to figure it out, because I am. I love what I'm doing, but I will continue to think about this for the next several weeks, and then after the budget, bingo, everybody will know.
All right, Governor, thank you.
Good to see you again.
All right, let's bring in Dan Adams, a criminal defense attorney, also a former prosecutor in the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, to talk about this case involving the judge. Dan, just start here. I mean, you were in the courthouse when this happened. You didn't witness it, but how unprecedented is this, what happened Friday?
Well, this is a bombshell in the Milwaukee County, not just courthouse, but legal community. I mean, these people, everybody knows these people. I'm in that hallway, 3 times a week, as are my colleagues. I've appeared in front of this judge. You know everybody involved. Yeah. So for a sitting circuit court judge to be arrested with handcuffs by the FBI, it's totally unprecedented.
You've reviewed these documents. You've reviewed what the feds are arguing. I mean, do they have a case here?
Well, they have applied for a complaint, which is not usual on the federal side. Usually we hear about a grand jury indictment, which is evidence provided to a secret panel of citizens who come back and say, yes, there's probable cause or not. Here they took a different route, which was to swear out essentially an affidavit saying there was probable cause on 2 different crimes. And a magistrate, sworn magistrate in the federal courts, reviewed it and found probable cause. So certainly they have a basis to bring these charges against Judge Dugan.
Essentially, this is the first of its kind. Is the Trump administration using this as a warning sign to judges across the country?
Sure. Well, deterrence is always a goal of criminal law. And I think that the Trump people would say that they are using this as a case to show that the law applies to everyone, no matter what your position is in your locality. If you break the law, we're coming after you. But the kind of brim and vigor of this is something kind of off the charts. Again, to send the FBI into the county courthouse to arrest a 60-something-year-old judge who's been here her whole life, rather than just order her into the courthouse, that was a show of force. That was a deliberate choice they made to show that they're taking this very seriously and aggressively.
This instantly became high profile. The Assembly Majority Leader Tyler August already hinted at potential impeachment depending on how this goes. I mean, how does all of this play out?
Well, obviously the biggest thing for her is this federal criminal case that she's going to have to deal with just like any other criminal defendant, but she also has this added layer of the scrutiny and attention nationally. The DOJ in Washington is going to be working on this. This isn't just going to be our local prosecutors. So they have the full brunt of the U.S. government coming down. So she's got to deal with that first. I'm sure that's what's going to keep her awake at night. But then she's also has the potential of the Judicial Commission, which is the governing body of judges, coming into play. Whether or not she was having ex parte communications with one party and not the prosecutor, that's mentioned in the complaint. Whether her overall conduct offended the judicial code. But at this point, I don't think that's going to be her biggest concern at all. Whether or not the Assembly and State Senate come into view with their own action, I would say that's very low on the priority list.
All right, a lot to come on this. Dan Adams, a defense attorney here in Milwaukee County. Dan, like always, thank you.
You bet.
Coming up, Jaron is back from Lambeau, the impact of the NFL draft, next.